Good afternoon again. Welcome back, all of you intrepid souls that are here for the rest of the conference and discussion. I think you're all in for a very large treat. Your next speaker is Victor Mendez, the administrator for FHWA, Federal Highways Administration. Victor and I go way back to when he was number 2 and then number 1 and at the Arizona Department of Transportation, and then went on to fame here in Washington. Washington has a way of going out and finding good talent and stealing it from us states, and Victor is a very good Victor Mendez is a very good example of that. He also is very extremely valuable to us as border legislators, especially in light of our efforts to coordinate what we're doing as border legislators with border governors. Because as administrator for FHWA, of course, Victor continues to work with the border governors on the transportation and logistics work table. But having come from Arizona and representing Arizona in border governors for many years, he has the insight from both the state level as well as the federal level. And without any further ado, I'm going to let my good friend, it's good to see him again. It doesn't look any older except for a few gray hairs.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon. And Russ, it's great to see you. Let me just kind of organize myself here. It sounds like you've had a very productive session. I know the session kind of went the whole day, and I'm not sure if everybody was here for the whole day. So I'll try to go through my comments rather quickly and then open it up for Q&A. But I did want to mention, as Russ did mention, I spent a good part of my career in Arizona. So we worked a lot with the Arizona-Mexico Commission and the Border Governors Conference, and dealt with quite a few issues at the border. And Russ was always very helpful in the Yuma area and in the Nogales area. And, there's always that competition. It's very healthy. But I think what we were trying to do ultimately is to really better the region and better both countries. And I think we were very, very successful in doing that when it came to the infrastructure issues. The other thing that I did want to mention about myself, other than the time I spent in Arizona, is that I actually grew up in El Paso, Texas. And so I actually have a really good feel for what it's like to be at the border. Not only professionally, but really just on personal experience growing up in El Paso. I have a good sense. And in fact, my folks, or at least my dad, still lives in El Paso, along with a couple of my brothers and sisters. As I mentioned earlier, we worked in Arizona with our legislative folks. Russ you were part of the Arizona-Mexico Commission on the board, if I recall correctly. And the interesting thing I remember about Russ, he actually flies his own airplane. So, and he told me he just bought a new airplane, so life must be good for Russ. But he would actually fly into Mexico because, we'd have meetings in various parts of Sonora. And he would fly there, so he understands very well, what it takes to actually have infrastructure, both not just surface transportation, but aviation is also as important, I think, for everything we do. Now, the infrastructure that we developed for Arizona and for Sonora actually did evolve into eventually what was one of the master plans for the entire region. I believe they're still working on improving that, but when I was there, we were still working on that issue, and actually we're developing the first master plan at that time. Now, one of the things that I think it's important for all of us to kind of reemphasize and recognize, and I'm sure you've all talked about it today, is that it's very difficult for anybody to really separate border issues from security issues. President Obama has many times said that the border represents both peril but also a promise for the time. Our border with Mexico it needs to be open to our friends from Mexico, but it also needs to be closed to the enemies. And so you will hear that quite often, and I think that's where we're trying to find the balance on a national basis between really having great relationships that really promote the regions and both countries, and then there's a security aspect. And so how do you balance that? That's really crucial. We must be able to support trade, tourism, and everyday travel that fosters economic growth, job creation, and cultural ties between the two nations. With an estimated 80% of our trade with Mexico passing over our land border, we remain committed to a 21st century border that is modern, secure, and efficient. The Federal Highway Administration is working with our partners to ensure precisely that that is what's happening. Much of the work is being done with our division offices that reside at each and every state on the border. Now, with job creation being a top priority in both the U.S. and in Mexico, we want the border to be an engine, not a brake on our mutual economic growth. The connection between infrastructure and economic progress is well established. The President has been speaking a lot lately about his plan for winning the future. And when he talks about that, he talks about the U.S. needing to out-innovate, out-educate, and out-build the rest of the world. So he has a real focus on infrastructure. So that means that investing in a transportation system that will harness the collective power of all modes to move people and goods as safely and efficiently as possible. Our border infrastructure must be an integral part of that process. I think you saw a very clear signal of that from the administration's commitment to economic growth a couple of weeks ago when the President unveiled his fiscal 2012 budget proposal to Congress. The President's budget is very bold and visionary. It's a really good approach, in my opinion, and it is a very good blueprint for the future, for winning the future. The President requested $129 billion for the Department of Transportation for fiscal 2012. The first installment in a 6-year, $556 billion reauthorization of our nation's transportation programs. Among many of the features, the budget calls for the creation of an infrastructure bank to fund projects of regional and national importance. When you look specifically at the FHWA component, the President is requesting $70.5 billion in fiscal 2012, which is the first year of a 6-year bill that would authorize $336 billion to put Americans back to work and really improve our infrastructure and prepare it for the 21st century. Now, this budget proposal is transformative. It increases highway funding by 48% over the previous levels of Safety Lou, which was our last reauthorization. And I did want to highlight one especially important item that I think is very important for the audience here today. The overall DOT request includes a $50 billion upfront investment to essentially continue a lot of the work that we have undertaken under the Recovery Act. And under the Recovery Act, we were looking, obviously, for all of us that are in the U.S. to jumpstart the economy by creating jobs and also by rebuilding our infrastructure at the same time. Now, within that $50 billion upfront investment, the President proposed that $2.2 billion of that money that goes through Federal Highway Administration would actually go to GSA to fund significant improvements in our land ports of entry. So I believe this speaks volumes about President Obama's commitment to our relationship with our neighbors and his desire to see that people and freight move across the border as safely and efficiently as possible. And with 2 of our 3 largest trading partners sitting on our northern and southern doorsteps, improvements to our border infrastructure are essential to achieving the President's goal of doubling U.S. exports by the year 2014. At the heart of our border efforts are 2 principles that I find very important: coordination and communication. The U.S.-Mexico Joint Working Committee, or a lot of us know it as the JWC from experience, is made up of representatives from federal and state agencies on both sides of the border. It meets twice a year to discuss current issues and flag issues that need more detailed study as part of the JWC work plan. This effort has helped set the agenda for the Binational Executive Steering Committee on 21st Century Border Management. The regional border master plans that you spent some time talking about today actually grew out of one of the JWC processes that we had in play for quite a few years. Now, the plans are an example of the coordination that marks our border efforts, allowing us to coordinate planning and project delivery at the land ports of entry in the regions the 5 regions, I should say, that make up the U.S.-Mexico border. Their main goals are to increase dialogue and understanding among the various border stakeholders and to create a plan for prioritizing and advancing transportation projects related to the border and ports of entry. The 5 regional border master plans, are currently in various stages of development. The one for the Baja California region is not only completed, but it's now actually being updated. Now, ideally, these plans will serve as a roadmap for various federal, state, regional, local agencies to deliver transportation projects. Now, project delivery is one of the issues that the entire transportation community is starting to really take a good hard look at. It's an issue that really affects everybody, whether it's safety, the livability of your communities, and the quality of the environment. The President's budget identifies shortened project delivery as a major administration priority. And Congressman Micah, who is the new chairman of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, has also made project acceleration one of his priorities. Several weeks ago, I actually testified at the T&I subcommittee about an innovation initiative that I launched over a year ago, and we call it Everyday Counts. It has 2 goals. One is to shorten project delivery, and the second is to speed up the deployment of promising new technologies. Current wisdom for major projects in the United States is that it takes us about 13 years to deliver major projects. And if you think about that, it's just simply too long. What we are suggesting here, and that's the average. When we're building major infrastructure, we're actually asking the public to invest in major infrastructure. We'll bring you a lot of safety benefits, a lot of benefits to actually move trade and commerce. And by the way, if you wait 13 years, we'll actually get that done. I think in today's environment, it's simply too long, too lengthy, and we need to do something to shorten that time. I think the benefits that we bring to the people, allowing them to spend more time with their family, with their friends, or visiting sites, recreation sites and such, is more important than being stuck in traffic. So one of my major priorities is to find a way to accelerate project delivery, cut the 13 years by 50%. That's my goal. Another pillar of Everyday Counts is related to technology. We're advancing 5 promising technologies, including some that improve safety, shorten project delivery time, and reduce energy consumption. Innovation and technology are also vital to the future of safe and efficient border transportation. We're currently conducting a number of pilot studies to determine and better communicate the time that it will take to cross the border. Wait time is not only important information for commuters and tourists, but it's also very important to the movement of freight. And literally, when you look at time is money, and it's important for us to keep that in mind. Now, this spring, we will be starting a new study on how intelligent transportation systems can be applied at the border region. And then we'll explore how technology can also be used to make the border greener. A recent workshop, and in fact, I believe the workshop was held last week, on greening transportation at the border was the first step in moving these kinds of concepts forward with respect to greening our infrastructure at the border. So ultimately, we're going to have to bring some innovative thinking to the area of finance as well. Governments at all levels are challenged today to do more with less. And so we'll need to look for ways to leverage private sector investment in order to get maximum return on our federal dollars. And this is in fact a role that was envisioned by the President when he introduced the Infrastructure Bank. He is proposing funding at $30 billion over 6 years. And before I close with my comments here, I do want to say a couple of things about our top priority at USDOT, and that is the topic of safety. Traffic fatalities today in the U.S. are at historic lows. We've had, in the year 2009, we had the lowest level of fatalities since the 1950s. So that's good. It's a good trend, and in fact, the last 2 years, I believe every year we've dropped 10% in terms of numbers. The flip side of that is on the negative side, is that even though we're at historic lows, there were still 34,000 people that died on the highway system. and that is simply way too much. So I think it's important for us to keep that in mind. Highway safety, very important. We need to keep working at that. Under the President's proposal, I do want to point out that we actually double our investment in the safety program, and over 6 years we allocate $17.5 billion to FHWA safety programs. And then let me just make one other pitch for my boss, Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood. In case you haven't heard, the past year and a half he has been on a personal mission with respect to distracted driving. We estimate that in the year 2009, about 5,000 people died on our highways because of distracted driving factors. So he has made it a personal mission of his to do something about that. And so what we would like to ask all of you to be our role models, our ambassadors in safety. And when you're driving around, please put away your cell phones and no texting while you're driving and no answering the phone while you're driving. So with that, let me just close out by saying once again thank you for inviting me, and make sure that as you drive around, buckle up, put away your cell phones, and then just very simply drive safely. So with that, thank you all very much, and I'll take any questions you may have. I can join you right here.
Okay. Speaking as probably the poster child for being preoccupied while I'm driving, maybe I shouldn't ask any questions about that. But I did want you to just, if you could, because one of the issues that border legislators have been dealing also with is how do we deal with waste tires? And as director of ADOT, and you were very much involved in the early projects and how we funded the whole industry to deal with our waste tires and how you use it in our transportation and construction. Could you just enlighten the...
You mean in terms of, what do you mean by the waste tires?
Well, the use of waste tire materials in building our roads in Arizona.
Oh, okay.
And the other benefits to the, what kind of a highway, what kind of a road does that make?
Well, one of the things that for years, and especially now, that I think is very important, when we look at how we build our highways, and I mentioned we're also looking at greening the infrastructure. There are other innovations that we're trying to introduce within Everyday Counts that also looks at how you actually build the highways, not only to reduce the time that it takes, but really to find different materials that could be used. We're also suggesting in many cases, we traditionally use hot mix. This is getting into how do you actually build highways. But if you use warm mix, for example, you lower the temperature. That means you use less fuel. You can actually recycle materials. And so there's just a lot of things that we could actually do throughout the nation and in all the various countries to actually build infrastructure that's more environmentally sensitive, that's sustainable. Recyclable materials could be used, and in fact, you can also reduce your energy consumption. So there's a lot of benefits to doing things like that.
Thank you. Are there any questions out there? I see one way in the back there. Lou?
Just a quick question. You mentioned that your goal is to reduce the construction of major projects 50% from 13 years to, what, 6.5?
6.5.
How are you going to do it?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I mentioned our innovation program, or initiative, I should call it, Everyday Counts. We actually have introduced 10 strategies as round one that will allow us to look at our processes to actually deliver faster. We're also introducing 5 technologies that will not only help improve the safety on our roadways, but also help us expedite the projects. So let me give you one example. And I'm looking at everything, the entire process, all the way from planning, design, the environmental process, and construction. And just to give you an example, in Utah and in Massachusetts, what they're doing now is when they're building, and it doesn't apply everywhere, but they're building bridges. When you're replacing a bridge or building a new bridge, what we traditionally do is we shift traffic, and then we build a bridge while traffic is underway. Well, Utah and Massachusetts and a couple of other states are beginning to build their bridges off-sites, kind of like using Legos. And then on a weekend, they go and demolish the existing bridge, and then they just slide the new bridge in. It takes a weekend when, in a traditional sense, it can take you 9 to 12 months. So right there, just in the construction phase, you have cut off about 9 to 12 months.
Quick follow-up. Of that 13 years, how much of that is regulatory process?
We're looking at that as well. We're looking at the environmental process. And by the way, the President issued an executive order, I want to say in December or maybe in January, asking every agency to do a regulation review to assess which regulations are overly burdensome on business and others, to look for regulations that really are obsolete. They've been in place forever and nobody's bothered to remove them. And just to look at regulations that do, in fact, get in the way of actually delivering what every agency has to deliver in a more efficient manner. On the environmental process, out of my 10 strategies, I believe 4 or 5 of them actually deal with the environmental issues. For example, one of the issues that we face traditionally when you're undertaking a major environmental document is what we call legal sufficiency. What we are starting to do is to bring all the attorneys into the discussion early in the process. And I'm sure Russ has heard this story many times before. Oftentimes you develop a project, and then at the end, the attorneys come in and say, well, you forgot this or you forgot that. We're bringing the attorneys into the process early so we can identify all the issues early and address them as you move through the process. So those are some of the strategies. I can't go into all 10 of them. I actually have a little document here. But that's what we're doing. We're looking at the entire process.
Well, I commend you bringing in all the plaintiffs early in the process.
Are there any other questions out there? Oh, yes, Edgar?
Yeah. The question is, from the previous panel, we heard about how it was important to have support for the development of master plans at the community level, state level, having the governors and others. How can state legislators help shape those development of master plans? I mean, because from my understanding, obviously at this juncture, it's kind of FHWA and the individual state departments of transportation, but is there an opportunity for state legislators in the respective districts to get engaged in that process?
Oh, absolutely. I think you have to have all the major stakeholders at the table. And I'll speak from my personal experience in Arizona. I can tell you that the Yuma contingent, Russ and all the others, were always at the table. They were part of the Arizona-Mexico Commission. The folks from the Nogales area were always there, from Douglas. They were engaged in all of these processes. But absolutely, I mean, I wouldn't just say it can't be just the legislative folks. It's got to be the community. We were looking at all the issues: healthcare, education, infrastructure. All of that needs to be taken into account, which means you have this whole, a very large segment of your population in the region that needs to be engaged. And part of that, I think, maybe Russ can answer from his perspective. But from my experience, you have to have everybody at the table.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. In terms of the border and how we do that, the Arizona-Mexico Commission, as well as the Comisión Sonora-Arizona, the way they're organized is there's a private sector and a public sector chair for each one of our committees from both sides. So the director for the State Department of Transportation and his counterpart from Sonora, and then we invite at the federal level, which they participate as well, and then people from the private sector. So this is already in the structure of the commission, and so as the committees meet during plenaries or interplenaries, they have an opportunity to talk about their transportation. In the case of transportation, you have all the players and stakeholders are right there from both sides of the border. So it's an advantage we have in Arizona and Sonora that we've had this relationship going back close to 50 years. So that really helps a great deal. You had a question, Andrew?
It as well. Victor, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the 5 processes that are undergoing the 5 master plans. I mean, we know Baja California and California got out in front and did this ahead of anyone else. How are the other 4 going? I mean, what makes you optimistic? What keeps you up at night? And are they looking different? I mean, is the process different in each case? And what do you expect to be done first? Whatever you can tell us within the bounds of propriety.
Sure. Well, let me give you the quick rundown here. As I mentioned, California, Baja California, they're actually already upgrading their plan. Yeah. So that tells you they've been in the game for quite a few years. And a couple of times I did go down to Southern California, visited them, and it's pretty obvious people are engaged in that issue. The Arizona Sonora item, they're still working on the issues, and they continue to have meetings. They continue to work through the Arizona-Mexico Commission. I sort of personally lost track of, if I know when I left a couple of years ago, we were, I think, very close to finalizing our plan, and I don't know if we actually did close that deal out or not.
Victor, we're very close to it, but we had some changes in administration in between, so kind of lost track a little bit there. But as far as I know, we're getting close to completion, and some of the other issues that Arizona was involved in kind of hurt our dialogue between ourselves and Mexico for a while. So we're back on track and talking again. So that's a good sign.
Okay. The third one that I have on my list is El Paso and Santa Teresa in New Mexico. What I'm showing here, the initiation date is still pending. Completion date, of course, is pending. They are waiting for the MPO and a port of entry study to get underway. And so there's a contract that actually will be executed for that. So that's still outstanding.
Jackie, that checks with what you said. Okay, good. From the Paso del Norte, Jackie Mitchell-Edwards from the Paso del Norte.
Okay. Who is Jackie? Raise your. Oh, that's you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So involved in the process.
Excellent. Laredo District, Coahuila, Nuevo León, Tamaulipas. I'm showing the initiation date was August of 2009. Completion July 2011 of this year. TxDOT led the planning process.
Okay.
Okay.
Anyone involved in that master plan in this group? No. Okay.
And then the fifth one that I'm showing is Lower Rio Grande Valley, Tamaulipas. Initiation in the next 6 months. It'll be a 2-year study, and the scope of work is being drafted.
Okay.
So there's progress being made on all of them.
Yeah.
Which is good.
It seems to be sort of unfolding west to east in that case.
Seems like it is, yes.
That way. Maybe coincidental. But yeah.
I didn't see any other hands up, I had to run another quick one. This came up earlier. I'm sorry, but while you're at it, it had to do with the border wait time study and the different time frames that the different states were involved in doing their border wait times, which have been primarily focused just on the commercial traffic, the truck traffic. As far as I know, only California has done something on the POVs, private vehicles, to look at wait times and the economic impacts of wait times on both sides, on the economies of the U.S. and Mexican sides of the border. What can you do in your position to incentivize or encourage the other states to go through what Sandag did in Southern California on border wait times as it pertains to private vehicles?
Well, excuse me. I think what all of us need to recognize is, wait time is one component of a performance or results-oriented approach. I mentioned in my speech that we're undertaking a study to look at intelligent transportation systems to help us better understand how you can actively manage traffic. You may have a lot of data, so your wait time is 10 minutes. What does that really mean? And then what you have to do is how can you apply technology with that data to actually help you make decisions to better operate and manage a port. So it's taking the data and actually converting it into a useful solutionary strategy. And the way we do it in just normal transportation is by looking at how do you better operate and manage your traffic. And so I think that's what all of us ought to be looking at throughout the border is, certainly there are some people that are already undertaking or have undertaken that kind of an approach, but the next step then is how do you actually better manage given that level of data, and what are those benefits? And I think if people understand that you can actually convert your data to good operational practices. If when people see those benefits, hopefully they'll come around and understand that we can do better.
If it's not, should that be a component of the master planning that's going on for both sides of the border?
I would think so, and like I said, we're just in the throes. I'm not sure if we even issued a contract, but we're in the throes of actually beginning a study on that.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. What are the wait times?
For intelligent transportation
Transportation
systems.
systems.
What else can you use? Wait time is one element, one
Right.
data element. There may be other elements we haven't yet thought of that actually will give you a better way to better operate and manage your traffic.
Okay, thank you. Gentleman back there.
I'm Brendan O'Connell with the Florida Bar. It's currently in the newspapers about the Orlando-Tampa proposed railway. Has the federal government done a cost-benefit analysis of that project as to initial cost, maintenance cost, number of riders, and do you determine that it is an efficient project?
Let me answer from a very high level, because that's not something that I deal with directly on a daily basis. We have the Federal Railroad Administration that's handling that. But as a team, we do talk about these high-level issues. The President has, in fact, proposed, as I mentioned, a very bold vision for transportation moving into the future. Part of that bold approach is very similar to what we did 50-plus years ago with the interstate system. He is introducing high-speed rail as another element of transportation. We identified, I believe, 5 major high-speed rail corridors. I believe all the information that you suggested has been looked at. I don't know to what degree, since I don't deal with it on a daily basis, but we certainly, in concert with all the states that were located along those corridors, had discussions with them about moving forward in those regions.
No other questions? Well, Victor, I want to thank you on behalf of the conference for taking your valuable time away and coming to speak with us today. I'll eventually forgive the federal government for taking you away from us in Arizona.
Okay.
But thank you so much. I
Well,
appreciate
thank you
it.
very much. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you, Victor. Before we close, let me just recognize again CSG West, the Board of Legislative Conference. It's been a great pleasure to do this with you. Robert Donnelly from the Woodrow Wilson Center, who carried most of the water on our side. Miguel Salazar, who's standing back there, who did a lot of the work as well. Dana and Sarah, who are somewhere around here running around. Sarah's there. Dana's probably running around doing things on the Calderon visit. And thank you to everyone for being here today, and look forward to continuing the discussion. And we very much look forward to continuing the discussion with you moving forward. This is a group of people deeply engaged in a lot of these issues, and hopefully we can keep the lines of communication open.
Certainly.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks.